Being a good person is really hard. I remember back in school, I had this conversation with a teacher. So basically, the teacher asked the whole class, what do you guys want to be when you grow up and when you graduate? And I said, I want to be a good person. Because honestly, it was a cop-out. I said it because I genuinely had no clue what I want to be when I graduate. And honestly, I still don't know what I want to be. And so, yeah, that was kind of a non-answer for me. I kind of just said the most obvious thing that came to my head. And what the teacher replied was quite surprising to me. And I think that's why I still remember this conversation to this day. So my teacher said, that is a really interesting answer because being a good person is really hard. It might be one of the hardest things you will need to do in your life. And when she said that, I was genuinely shocked. I was just like, I remember thinking to myself, I mean, what is she on about? I thought this would just kind of like be a pass and she will either like kind of tell me off for saying a non-answer or just kind of ignore my answer. But no, she actually replied to it properly and proceeded to really talk about this topic, which is why I want to tell you the story today, because I think the interesting thing is looking back. Like if you look back to when you were a teenager or when you were a child and you rethink about the conversations you had with the adults in your life, I think you will get a really interesting perspective of what they're trying to say, like what they're actually trying to teach you and the lessons behind their words. Because when you were a teenager, at least for me, I feel like I understood the words, like I understood roughly what she was trying to say, but I didn't actually get the meaning of it. I didn't actually understood the essence of the lesson. And so it's not honestly not until recently that I've started to extract from this conversation of what my teacher is actually trying to teach me. And I think the premise of basically what she's trying to say is the fact that being a good person requires you to uphold your morals and your values and all the ethics that you have when there is either a temptation or when life gets really hard and all you are capable of thinking of really is to survive or is to take care of yourself first before you can even care for others. And so when you're at that stage or when either when temptations come, you know, there's money involved, there's opportunities, you know, there's just kind of all these things that sometimes might tempt you to do things that is maybe not as ethical and maybe not as moral as what you would like to be. Then I think it's in those moments where you really have to make the choice to be a good person. You really have to make the choice to be ethical and to do the right thing, even if you have the chance to not do the right thing. And the other thing I've kind of realized about being a good person is the fact that if you learn how to communicate properly with people, it makes the whole idea of being a good person way easier. Because a lot of it is about having empathy and compassion for people and genuinely deep down from your heart you want to help someone without any return whatsoever. You just genuinely want to help them because you feel compassion, because you feel empathy, because you understand what they're going through, and you want to help them in whatever ways you can. And one of the easiest and most straightforward, and I think most effective way to do that is to learn how to communicate with them properly. Because a lot of people just want to be understood, or a lot of their problems come from them not being able to either work through or see what they are dealing with, or just, yeah, like the issue might not be as obvious to them, because when you're in it, it's really hard to see, right? So a lot about, if you're able to actively listen to them and really understand what they're trying to say to you, then I think you will become a good person naturally, because you will then be able to understand what issues they're facing, and therefore think about ways that you can actually help them. You can, yeah, like sometimes it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes people just want a listening ear. Sometimes they just want to have a channel to kind of express themselves and say what they have in their head, and just have someone to be there to really listen to them, and not kind of, try to inject their own self into the conversation. And so a lot of it is about active listening, because if they can actually feel like you are listening to them because you're asking the right questions, or you are just really understanding and empathetic, then they will feel like, yeah, someone is listening to them, and they will feel this sense of relief from that, even though you technically didn't do anything, you just listened. And so I think, yeah, being a good person is a really interesting thing if you think about it. And that brings me to my next point, which is that I think being good and being nice is two different things. And that is because being good means that it is coming from your heart. Like, you are doing things out of just because you want to help, because you want the best for this person or this situation. Whereas being nice, in my mind, being nice is sometimes about the fear of conflict. It's about just trying to present yourself as a nice person, and making sure there is kind of no conflicts that is happening. And the reason why these two things are different, and it's important to understand the difference, is that when you are being good, when you are a good person, sometimes that requires you to kind of say the difficult things. It requires you to not be a nice person sometimes. Because if you know someone, or you, like for example, you have a friend, and you know that there is something that you need to remind them, or you need to tell them that they can improve on, or just give them some sort of feedback or some sort of conversation that might be difficult and might be uncomfortable for you both, because in a sense you are kind of pointing out their flaws. But you're doing it with the intention to help them, to kind of let them understand that this is what I see, and this is what I kind of want to help you with as well, But that is sometimes taken as not being a nice person. And I think it's important to not mistake that with that you are not a good person. Because when you're being nice, sometimes I think it's actually worse. Because when you're being nice, it is a bit surface level. Because if you see like a very obvious thing, or yeah, like a very obvious thing that you should be telling this person about, but you don't tell them and you don't help them out, therefore, then in a sense you're not being a good person, you're just being a nice person, because you are avoiding doing the thing that will help them. And yeah, I think it is a very interesting thing to be conscious of as well when you are just interacting or going into your day-to-day life. Because personally, I think I do struggle with kind of the concept of being nice and being good, because I think being nice is a bit easier, because being nice just means that you need to present yourself a certain way, whereas being good means that you actually have to put in effort and genuine care for someone, even if it's uncomfortable. And so I guess what I've learned from thinking back to the story and what my teacher told me in school about what being a good person is the fact that being a good person is a lifelong lesson. And it all starts from learning how to communicate with people, how to express yourself and also understand what they're trying to say to you. Because a lot of this is about having compassion, having understanding and empathy for someone, and help them out because you understand them now. And the other thing is just to be mindful of the difference between being nice and being good. Because, yeah, being good sometimes requires you to have boundaries as well. Like, it sometimes requires you to understand that, you know, you have to uphold your own morals and ethics and also your own well-being, and not prioritizing being nice when some things can actually help people, but it might make the situation a bit uncomfortable. So yeah, that's kind of all I had to say today. This is day 24 of me talking to the camera. Bye.